Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Death Note Part 1, Episode 13, Confessions. The episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens within this episode. So the episode begins with the task force receiving another video from Kira or the second Kira, as well as a diary page of the second Kira's. On the diary page, there are 3 locations listed. One that seems inconsequential, the other one is a place where they can exchange notebooks, and then the third place is a major sporting event where they could compare Shinigami. Obviously, the police, having heard Shinigami mentioned before, fixate on that particular place on the 30th of May. I think it's May. But also on the 22nd, there is the notebook place, and then on the 23rd is the place that ends up being inconsequential. And so they decide that they're going to go to each of the places, cancel the game on the 30th so that they can't meet, but then go to each of the other places just in case. Kira and Matsuda, being the youngest, volunteer to go to the place, I think it's Aoma, something like that, on the 22nd, and basically letting him go. They don't see anything happening. However, postmarked on the 23rd, the task force then receives another message from Kira basically saying, Kira, I found you. And this, of course, very much surprises Light, as he had purposefully invited college friends to create a large group so that even if Ryuk was seen by Rem, that they wouldn't know who it was attached to, but he didn't know about the fact that those who make the ideal are able to see the lifespans of everyone except Shinigami or other Death Note holders. And so that is how he was able to be found, which we do learn later. Obviously, Misa is on the shopping street in a cafe and sees Light walk by while she is in disguise, but leaves not meeting him because she doesn't want to draw attention to their meeting, which is actually pretty smart. We then basically have Elle deciding that what they're going to do is post a message to the second Kira to basically try to make a deal with them to turn in the real Kira and give them the real Kira's name. And then this message airs. We see Misa watching it, and after watching it, she decides that Kira might be worried and she can't have that, so she decides to walk to Light's house, which is apparently publicly available on the internet because she looked up his name, and because it's a unique name, he was the only result, and his little profile online happened to include like his educational history, his tennis championship history, and his address, which is very unsecure private information. And then she goes to his house. Luckily, earlier in the episode, to hide the fact she was working with the task force, he lied to his mother and sister that he had a girlfriend, and then that gives him the excuse when Misa shows up. Oh, yeah, this is the one I was talking about. They go up to his room, and that is where Misa basically begs to be his eyes, allays all of his suspicions, lets him know how she's covered her tracks, and then asks to be his girlfriend and tells the story of how her parents were killed by a burglar. The burglar looked like he was going to get to walk free, and then Kira ended the burglar, which is why she is forever in love with Kira. And Light decides to play along, and he tells her that he cannot be her boyfriend, but he can play the part. And then he hugs her with a rather evil look on his face, and then she hugs him back, saying that she's going to work hard to make him love her. And that is where we end this episode. So now that we've been reminded about what happens, we will rank this episode on our two lists. So, a reminder, we rank on our mostly objective ranking list, which is void emotion, and then our personal ranking list, which is entirely emotion. So as always, I've highlighted the mostly objective rank values that I felt applied to this episode. So we start, of course, with our multi-arc supporting character development, and this has to do with Misa. We learned that Misa wasn't as stupid as we remembered or thought, and even even Elle points out we don't know how stupid the second Kira actually is, and then even Light has a line where he's like, maybe she's not as stupid as I thought, and then I'm here in the audience like, I remembered she was really stupid, but even I'm thinking now, maybe she's not as stupid as I thought. So basically, she's not as stupid as we all thought. Why? Because she had the foresight to disguised the true location of the meeting in her diary note that she gave to the news station, which gave to the task force. We know that she wore a disguise and had the foresight not to approach Kira directly in the crowd of people, which would have been suspicious. She also made multiple tapes of fake ghost stories with her friend that her friend mailed to multiple stations, and she only took the Kira tapes, which she put the graphic on and the voice changer over. But any fingerprints that are found on the tapes would belong to her friend. So again, she had that foresight. She obviously, we learned some of her backstory about the burglar killing her parents in front of her, almost getting free because of how drawn out the trial was. People started thinking he was falsely accused. Then Kira killed him. That's why she is in love with Kira. She doesn't care if she's used by Kira. She wants to be the weapon of his weapon, use her eyes for him. She even offers to give him her notebook so that basically she can't kill anyone without his say so, and she can't kill him. And she even offers to do everything she can to see Elle's name for him, which is what gets him to agree to pretend to be her boyfriend while saying that he can't be her boyfriend. We then have our multi-arc main character development, which is the fact that Light is found out by the second Kira, Misa, and then agrees to play the part of her boyfriend. Why do I keep stressing play the part of her boyfriend? Because one of the things that I did not like about the character was, well, actually we'll get to it later. I just remembered. That's part of our negative points. So anyways, the next positive that we have is the world building, which is where we learn that people who have made the Shinigami ideal can see the lifespan of everyone and the name of everyone, except they cannot see the lifespan of other Shinigami, their Shinigami, or anybody else who has a notebook. Which brings us up to 11 points. However, there is the negative messaging or behavior. And this is where that whole thing that I was talking about earlier, stressing how he agrees to play the part of her boyfriend, he obviously has no interest in her whatsoever, like at all. And honestly, I don't know that Light would have interest in anyone. I think the notebook has messed with his emotions to the point where I don't think he would have been with anyone anyways, and that any relationship that he would have tried to get into would likely have been more of a business relationship for reputational purposes than anything else. But having said that, the line where she'll work hard to make Light love her, the fact that she is, trying to be with someone who clearly isn't interested. I don't believe that you should ever be trying to make someone love you. If some like you aren't entitled to anyone else's love. If they end up falling in love with you, that's great. But if they don't, like there's nothing you can do to make them love you. And it kind of always has put a sour taste in my mouth, at least, this whole plot point, like this subplot of Misa trying to be with Light, and even to the point when Light doesn't want to be with her, even using Rem to kind of blackmail him to make sure he pretends to love her. I feel like that is just not good and should not be encouraged. If somebody doesn't love you, know that you deserve better and go and find somebody who does love you, that you also can love, and that is your match. But holding on to someone who clearly is not interested just because you happen to have an interest in them, you can't force other people to feel things. So I felt that was negative. I consider it negative like throughout the entire series, really, to be honest. But overall, that's why I gave it a -2 there, and that brought us to a 9 out of 10 objective ranking for this episode. So we'll now get into our part 1 rankings so far, and our mostly objective ranking list is as follows so far. First place, Rebirth, Confrontation, Doubt, Encounter. This episode, Confessions, came in 5th place. Then we have Tactics, Pursuit, Glare, Unraveling, Love, Dealings, Assault, and Overcast, currently in 13th. So there are a few things I like about this episode. Overall, I liked most of the episode. I felt like it was entertaining and engaging. I didn't feel bored watching it, which is important because sometimes when it gets overly talky, I do start to feel a little bit bored. So this one was great for that. I like that we finally are having that connection between the first and second Kira. I like that we're learning more information about how the eyes work because Light never took that deal. It's through me so that we're going to learn about that. I like the visuals of like Ryuk kind of flying over the group, of, Misa's eyes when she's using them, glowing red. I also enjoyed the kind of foreshadowing within the episode of Light trying to come up with an excuse for why he's getting home late, and then being like, oh yeah, I've happened to gotten a girlfriend. That was not proper grammar. I happen to have gotten a new girlfriend. Sounds better. And then lo and behold, at the end of the episode, when Misa appears, ready-made excuse, and he didn't even know he was gonna need it. And of course, he then implies to his mother and sister that this is the one he was talking about, i.e., his girlfriend. So it is shocking to me that it takes so much convincing for him to pretend to play the part of the boyfriend, because it's like this is kind of falling into your lap as an excellent excuse, especially since you had unintentionally set up the premise already with your mother earlier, and your sister. So I would have thought he would jump on that as like a great cover story, but he didn't. Well, he does eventually, but he has his suspicions. He interrogates Misa. Misa then, you know, goes over her story, tells him the things that she did to try to avoid being caught. But what I love the most is at the end of the episode, when he is hugging Misa, it basically shows his face over her shoulder, and both of the Shinigami are behind him, so nobody can see this face of his. But it has the most evil evil look on his face because he is so prepared and happy to use her and her eyes and take advantage of the trust she has in him. This is why I say, like, he probably would never have been able to successfully be in a relationship anyways. So while it leaves a horrible taste in my mouth that, she wants to try to force him to love her, and Rem forces him to stay with her and not break up with her because of the notebook and like the blackmail and everything, that leaves a bad taste in my mouth, but at the same time, I almost think it's not as big a deal as it otherwise would be, because I genuinely do not think Light would have been capable of finding a woman to fall in love with, because I think the notebook has done such a number on his emotional capacity, i.e., like really reducing it, that any person he married would have been for reputational purposes only, and most likely semi-business transaction. Though I do feel like because it would have been for reputational purposes, that he would have tried to find someone who was like really high-powered, shall we say, like, maybe a fellow college student, someone on the track to be big in business or government or something like that, that would have like been on his level, not like a rather vapid not model type person. But regardless of that fact, it doesn't bother me as much as it otherwise would have, simply because I don't think that he actually has the capacity to be in a relationship. So, having said that, because I did enjoy this episode, and I did find it entertaining to watch. And there wasn't really any negatives apart from, like I said, what leaves a sour taste in my mouth just in general. I also decided to agree with our objective ranking for this episode because we are getting so much information in an entertaining way, and gave it a 9 out of 10, which brings the personal rankings for part 1 so far to, in first place, Rebirth, Encounter, Glare. This episode, Confessions, comes in 4th, and then we have Doubt, Pursuit, Confrontation, Tactics, Dealings, Love, Overcast, Unraveling, and then in 13th place, my least favorite so far, Assault. Which brings us to our final segment, which is, of course, our series ranking so far, where we're going to be ranking each of the parts against each other. And so far, part 1 has earned a score of 92 out of 260, and the personal side has earned a score of 80 out of 260. So with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Deathnote Part 1, Episode 13, Confessions. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.